One of the most fun questions I love to ask people is, who your favorite question, or who your favorite president was? And the internet is replete with more than one historian and academicians and academics and presidential scholars opining and weighing in as to who their president is, best and worst. And when you ask civilians, they normally will give you the usual answers. FDR, Lincoln, whatever. It might be more contemporary, JFK or Obama or Reagan or whatever. And you can tell immediately. You can tell immediately whether somebody knows what they're talking about, whether they really understand the essence of this, whether they understand the gravamen, the actual trick to this question. Because the first question you should be asking, of course, is, what do you mean best? What do you mean worst? Worst how? What are the criteria for what is and is not a good or a bad president? You mean the most famous? You mean the one who gets the most airtime? The one who is referenced in media more? Somebody who's famous? Somebody who's loved? Somebody who is part of the social scrum? See, that's where it gets interesting. Let me explain to you what that means, why that's critical, and give you a couple of hints as to what you should be looking at before you answer the question. But first, oh yes, first, a word from our sponsor. Did you know that gold was the best performing asset in 2022? It's true. Through all record-breaking inflation rates, crashing markets, and crypto scams, there is one asset that held its own: gold. And Noble Gold Investments helped thousands of clients buy real physical gold last year. According to longtermtrends.net, gold outperformed the S&P 500, the Dow, and Bitcoin in 2022. Had you invested in the S&P 500 a year ago, you would be down more than 20%. If you invested in Bitcoin a year ago, you would be down more than 65%. And if you invested in the Dow a year ago, you would be down almost 10%. Yes, gold. Gold has outperformed them all in 2022, and silver was not far behind. So what are you waiting for? Join the thousands of others by opening a gold IRA or silver IRA with Noble Gold Investments. Invest with Noble Gold Investments before the end of this month, and you'll bag a free 1/4 ounce American Gold Eagle coin with every qualified IRA of $50,000 or more. You can't go wrong with Noble Gold Investments, and there are thousands of 5-star reviews. Now, if you're not ready to invest, download the Noble Gold Investments Gold Investment Guide. Scroll down below and you'll find the link in the description box. Now remember, for mobile users, click the More button to find the link. Noble Gold is who I trust. And remember, there is always a risk of loss, and past performance is not indicative of future results. Okay. Best president, worst president. What do you mean? My criteria for best is, did you not do anything wrong? Did you keep us out of war? Did you maintain the economy? Did you not exhibit or participate in anything that is considered egregious? Did you do anything along those lines? And that's critical. That's critical. That's the first issue. Did you not do anything that was catastrophic? Did you just leave well enough alone? Did you just not break anything? At first, don't kill the patient, do no harm. Okay. We can get into then, did you do scandals? Were you involved in scandals? Did you do scandals? Were they of your choosing? Are you an accidental president? How about some great accidental presidents? Harry Truman, Teddy Roosevelt, John Tyler. John Tyler was terrific. McKinley. Garfield was great. Grover Cleveland had his moments. Yeah. John Quincy Adams. Loved him. The worst? What do you mean the worst? The worst? Franklin Pierce, a drunk. Buchanan, Andrew Johnson. Oh my God! It depends. And then you get into this notion of, well, what about Lincoln? Was Lincoln that great? Well, Steven Spielberg loved him. Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. Lincoln is not what people think in terms historically of what he was as to slavery and the like. His goal was the notion of maintaining the Union. Now, there's another group of people who have suggested, why is it anybody's fault to maintain the Union? It is within the rules to secede, right or wrong or what have you. Nobody ever speaks about it from that point of view. Well, isn't secession bad? Not everybody thought so. I must admit, I think a contiguous, intact country is a lot better. But understand, again, the reference. Who were these people? What was and I'm going to say it, what was the zeitgeist? Who were these people? And forget personalities. People always love to go into, well, who was weird? Who was weird? Did you know that Grover Cleveland, on the weekends, was like the only person in the White House? It was reported that if you were one of the few people who had a phone, and the joke goes, if you called the White House, and whoever answered, if you said, President Cleveland, please, you would most probably hear, speaking. It was a different world then. It was this, James Garfield didn't want to be nominated. He said, no. Harding, was Harding poisoned? I mean, just all these great stories. Warren Gamaliel Harding, Teapot Dome. The greatest writer? Who was the greatest writer? Believe it or not, U.S. Grant. Many people believe he was. Washington, very odd. Didn't know how to deal with people. He had things to put his hand on, and he didn't really. I think I told you this. Jefferson never made a speech. Adams was a far different type, far saltier. I mean, if you want to get into the personality types of these folks, then you get into Miller Fillmore and Rutherford B. Hayes, and then you get into and I mentioned Cleveland. What was great about Cleveland was the only two-term non-consecutive two-termers ever. And a real stand-up guy who lost, I think, his first re-election, I think it was an electoral vote. He says, well, those are the rules. That's the way it goes. We knew what we were getting into. A far different cry. And then there are people that, and this is what I want you to listen to, because you can hear me ramble about these little moments of, historical, that's cute. It's fascinating stuff. It is truly fascinating. But the one thing I want you to understand, no matter what you think about any president, you've got to wait. Remember, history would be a wonderful thing if only it were true. When it comes to presidents, you have to wait a significant period of time before anybody really recognizes, really settles down into who they were and are. That's the most important. We don't know. Truman left with one of the worst ratings maybe ever. And now he's loved. History's a very weird thing. It's a strange... It's and say what you want about Ken Burns. God bless him for at least making it seem remotely interesting. But there is no truth to this. Do you think Kennedy, 1,000 days, do you think Kennedy was as great as he was? Or is the tragedy of his death, this young, handsome couple, that Camelot in the 60s, and that day killed everything. It was the harbinger of the 60s and Vietnam and the terrible 5-year period from 63 to 68 with JFK, RFK, MLK, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X. It just went on. It was awful. That day, I was 5 years old. I remember my mother was crying. I didn't understand. I was like, what's going on here? It was, and there's a there's a tendency to wax hagiographic, to romanticize about people, to not necessarily be as critical. But wait till you see what history does regarding Trump and Clinton and Obama and Biden. And you have to wait, because we're too close. The notion of history presupposes a significant lapse of time before there's any kind of reflection. You have to have that. Without that, it's not history. It was the other day. There has to be this notion of comparison. You have to have, and who gets to write it? Is ChatGPT going to write history? Who is going to write history? What will be the prevailing thought regarding the personalities and the efficacy and the lunacy of this? I mean, let me just warn you, whatever you think is going to be the case in the future, do not necessarily believe so. Because, again, history has to be read in terms of the context. But if I have to pick the worst, Franklin Pierce, hands down. But my favorite president, the person who really was the guy who did the right thing, who actually, despite, and it is, and the worst is what FDR did. Oh my God. I can go through from the St. Louis to basically the wanted to pack the cord, and he was in many respects despised by people. But to go through a depression and World War II, and while being physically, I don't know if I admire him or the fact that he didn't just quit. So he is there. Lincoln for the prose, but U.S. Grant, his writing is even better. And Washington is heraldic. It's almost like you can't speak of him normally. So I haven't been very good as far as who my favorite was, because like I told you, I like Grover Cleveland. I despised Wilson. Wilson was awful. Read what Wilson writes. Dear God. Oh my God. Income tax and post League of Nations. Oh my God. Plus he had a stroke. His wife Edith ran the show. Favorite is tough. Favorite is tough. Because there's favorite because of what they did, and then there's kind of the personal thing. I'm kind of, believe it or not, I'm kind of like a Cleveland fan. Plus he was born in Caldwell, New Jersey, and his home is right there on Bloomfield Avenue. We drive by it all the time. I haven't been much help regarding that, but Franklin Pierce, not good. All right, my friends, have a great and a glorious day. Thank you so much for watching. Please put your thoughts in the comments down. Who were your favorites? Whom did you despise or loathe or detest? And please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you hit that little bell so you're notified of new videos and the like, and comment as you see fit.